Call to order the regular board meeting of the Directors of Elephant Butte Irrigation District for Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. Mr. Esslinger, would you please give us the introduction?
Heavenly Father, we just thank you, God, for this opportunity to come before you. We thank you for the grateful hearts that are here before you. We ask your blessings over this board meeting. We ask for your guidance and directions on every decision that is made by these board members today. Thank you for the harvest season, and we ask that you fill the warehouses. We ask you, Lord, to bring forth the winter snow in our watersheds, and ask that you bless us and bless those in this valley, God. Bless each and every farmer that is in this valley, Lord, and let them prosper. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Garai, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. That brings us to introduction of guests. I will note with the arrival of Director Leslie, we have a quorum. Let's start here in the back row.
Karen Byram, EBID.
Alpha Perot, Office of the Secretary.
Alex Rubio, EBID. Juan Caballero, EBID.
And Madam Secretary, would you please announce those online?
Yes, Mr. President, we have D.R. Sanders, Owens, Doris Maciel, James Narvaez, Dr. King, Cheryl Smith, and Tammy Dion. And that'll be it, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the approval of the board minutes. The first was our regular board meeting on November 13th, 2024. Were there any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, hearing none, we also have the minutes for the special board meeting on November 20th, which are exceptionally short. Any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes for November 13th and November 20th. Second. I have a motion for Mr. Garai, seconded by Mr. Roby Rosa, to approve the minutes of November 13th and November 20th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. That brings us to the selection of precinct 2 board member. We had a selection committee of which Director Garai was the head of. I turn the floor over to you.
The selection committee consisted of myself, Don Hackey, and Bill Porter. And through the course of it, we both of those are farmers in precinct 2, by the way. We talked to several candidates, Richard Moore being one of them, Zane Watkins, Garrett Poe, Brent Archer, Casey, which is here, Casey Christ, and Roy Hackey. Several of them wanted to, but time constraints and things are going. Casey said he'll take the challenge on, so we have Casey here before us to be our board member too, if so approved.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board before I ask Casey to introduce himself? Hearing none. Casey, please tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Casey. I work for Adams Produce. Scott's my father-in-law. I've been a city councilman in the city of Hatch for 6 years now, so I've had been on board before, I guess. So, but I'm interested to learn all about this. So,
Thank you. I expect that experience will serve you and us very well. So, very happy to have you. With that, if there's no further questions, I would accept a motion to, what's a proper way to word that, Mr. Lutz? Appoint. I would select a motion to appoint Casey Christ to be the board member for precinct 2 until the next regular election.
I move to approve Casey Chris as appointed board member until the next election.
I have a motion from Mr. Sloan, seconded by Mr. Garai. Any discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opinion of the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. Welcome to the board, Casey. Glad to have you. Madam Secretary, I neglected to request an oath of office. Oh, you got it?
He has a copy.
Very good. If you would please stand and raise your right hand and read the oath of office.
I, Casey Chris, have been appointed to the office of the Director of the Elephant Butte Irrigation District Precinct Number 2 in the County of Doniana, State of New Mexico. Do solemnly swear I support the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the State of New Mexico, and faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of my office to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God.
Thank you, Casey. You are a duly appointed member of this board, with all the rights and privileges and responsibilities there too. I'm happy to have you. So, Mr. Sloan,
you have the agenda?
He has the whole packet.
that's an excellent question. We're coming to the next agenda item, which is a resolution to amend the Open Meeting Act. Mr. Lutz, I'll turn this over to you to present.
Certainly, this is just an amendment to our annual Open Meetings Act resolution. Excuse me, because the second meeting that is typically scheduled would fall on Christmas Day, it was discussed at the last meeting to amend that Open Meetings Act resolution to essentially eliminate that meeting, which is what it does. I'd like to thank Naomi for doing the work on preparing the amendment. It was very good, and that's essentially it. Now, do remember we would have our regularly scheduled first meeting for next week. We will need one person to come and kind of open and close. I'm assuming it will be a meeting with no particular action items, given how many people are going to be gone, but.
And thank you very much. I do have a follow-up question on that. Are there questions from the board on the resolution that was presented? I think it's appropriate to act on the resolution first, and then I'll ask my question to Mr. Lutz about next week's meeting. I will accept the motion to approve Resolution 2024-01B, amending our Open Meeting Act resolution. I have a motion for Mr. Ludwig to approve the amended or approved Resolution 2024-01B. Seconded by Mr. Sloan. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion is closed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opinion of the president, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. For our meeting next month, we're not going to have any agenda items. And so what's the proper procedure for our secretary in noticing that meeting? Because there's no agenda.
I feel like it would be similar to how we did the meeting the day before Thanksgiving, which was essentially have an agenda that indicates that there will be no business. And then it's open and closed by one lucky individual that is willing to come down here as a board member to do so. So I believe you'll be in Washington, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So that brings us to the question of who is willing to come down here and open and close the meeting. It took like less than 5 minutes. Mr. Sloan has offered to do it. I appreciate that very much. Mr. Greyer, the secretary, but boy, that's an awfully long way to ask you to come down for a 5-minute meeting, and I appreciate Mr. Sloan being willing to.
It's easy.
So next Wednesday at 9 o'clock,
Yes.
you'll be here.
I'll be here.
I'll be
I got you.
Okay.
Gary will be
She'll get you through it. Promise.
Promise me the gavel.
here. Gary will be here too. So. Very good.
Which brings us to my next question, which is with regard to our Open Meetings Act resolution, which this body will pass next board meeting, the first board meeting in January for 2025. And to help us from having amendments, I'd like to provide some guidance to Mr. Lutz and the staff management on what you expect for that Open Meetings Act agenda. If you're still expecting 2 meetings a month, and if we are, can they exclude the fourth Wednesday in November and the fourth Wednesday in December because of, the holiday conflict. What's the guidance from the board? Mr. Roverosa?
Mr. President, I think we can go back to one meeting per month.
All right, it's been suggested by Mr. Roverosa that one meeting per month is sufficient.
I was gonna say, let's do two meetings and let's see how we get to the spring and then make a decision, what I was gonna say.
Thank you. So Mr. Sloan is suggesting to keep it at 2 meetings a month
I agree.
with Raphael.
One.
Okay. No, it's good to know what the opinions are. Mr. Garai, you've got to come, yeah, you and Mr. Ludwig have to come the farthest
As long as we're not staying here until 5:36 like we were at the beginning, I'm good.
with one,
With one.
as long as we're not staying late. That's a tough one. So to put you on the spot, Mr. Claypool, as soon as you walk through the door,
I apologize, being late. I had a plan to be here on time. Some unknown moron derailed that plan.
that happens. So Mr. Claypool, the matter that we're discussing is guiding Mr. Lutz and management on what we'd like next year's Open Meetings Act resolution to look like. Do we want to go back to 1 meeting a month? Do we want to remain at 2 meetings a month?
Mr. President, by the time we get these settlement negotiations behind us, we'll go back to one meeting a month. Hopefully.
That fits what Mr. Sloan suggested, which was to have 2 meetings through the spring.
Mr. President, the other thing we talked about internally is applications and transfers and suspensions, placing all of that on a consent agenda rather than presenting it to the board unless it needs to be presented to the board, which will actually hopefully save quite a bit of time during board meetings.
I suspect that Mr. Chris is familiar with the consent agenda. You probably have one in Hatch. Are the rest of you familiar with what a consent agenda is?
No.
So a consent agenda is a list of items where unless you have a request to pull that and act on it separately, all of those items are handled together in a single motion. It places additional responsibility on you as board members to be fully prepared for the board meeting because there will be no presentation on the items you're approving. So you must have reviewed them and ensure that if there's anything you have questions on, that you ask to have that pulled from the consent agenda.
Before the meeting.
No, you ask for it in the meeting itself. But it essentially, if we work through the consent agenda, any items want to be pulled, and if you're not prepared to pull an item, you're just approving them all or disapproving them all. Mr. Roverosa.
Mr. President, I think that if we need to discuss anything with regard to litigation, we can set up a special board meeting that's just closed session as needed.
I would concur with that. So this will also be bringing the committee meetings back into our 1 meeting a month. It will certainly make it easier to have committee meetings because we're not tripping over the next board meeting as well.
I am with James on this one. I think we should do it just for a shorter period of time. There's a lot of moving things coming in those first, or Q1 of next year, calendar year. I think we should just stick to 2 for a little bit and then we can shift it down to 1.
I know EP1 does 2 a month.
Okay.
I mean, I talked to the board members and they basically theory was to have 2 shorter meetings versus having 1 drug out meeting. I mean, it works better for me to have 2 shorter meetings than to have 1 where I lose a whole day.
It's easier on my mental fatigue. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, I would suggest or request, if we're gonna have 2 meetings a month, that there only be staff reports once a month.
I would concur with that.
So budget, staff, that way we're not preparing, because we spend a lot of time preparing for board meetings, and that's not a good use of time.
So without getting too far into the weeds into the item that's not on our agenda that we're just providing guidance to. Mr. Sloan, Mr. Clayshult, if we were presented with an Open Meetings Act resolution that only has 1 meeting a month, we can debate and alter the resolution at that time. I just want to make sure that you wouldn't have heartburn with that being the process. Okay. So given that on balance, if I understand the will of the board sufficiently, speak up if I don't. Mr. Lutz and Mr. Smith, if you please prepare an Open Meetings Act resolution that returns us to one board meeting a month. And be prepared that we may amend that, during debate on that item in January. The last thing I want to note for our January board meeting that goes along with the Open Meetings Act resolution is we have to select officers at that time. I want to be clear, I will not accept nomination for president of this board for an additional term. It is incredibly important that we have transition in leadership. I will still be here. I will obviously support the board and the newly elected leadership. These leadership roles should not be permanent. And so I've been in this role for about 2 years now, and I think it's appropriate for somebody else's voice to be the one leading them. So think about who you would like to have there. Do not discuss it with other board members before the next board meeting. Regrettably, we just have to do it in an open board meeting. But I can let you know, I will not accept nomination. All right. Brings us to calendar events. Mr. Smith.
Mr. President, you have the December and January calendars in your board packet. Next week, we, board members, myself, and our attorneys, and Phil King will be in Washington, D.C. for mediation from the 9th through the 13th. As we just discussed, Mr. Sloan is going to appear on the 11th and call the meeting to order and close the meeting for us. The office will be closed from December 24th, Christmas Eve, returning to work on January 2nd. There is a Stormwater Coalition meeting on the 19th at 1:30 p.m. if anyone's interested. In January, our first board meeting will be on the 8th. And as you stated, we will have the election of officers at that board meeting. So we need to be prepared to handle that. There's a Stormwater Coalition meeting on the 16th of January at 1:30 p.m. if anyone's interested. And then the 21st through the 23rd is the Irrigation Leader Workshop in Chandler, Arizona, which I believe is further down the agenda, but Naomi will be presenting at that conference. Joel will be presenting at that conference. And I understand that a number of board members would benefit from attending that. And our second monthly board meeting falls during that conference.
Should we have one?
Should we have it? And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions on the calendar of events? Hearing none, that brings us to water resources. Good morning, Dr. King.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for you this morning, but I did want to update you, particularly on the outcome of the allocation committee meeting late last month. These are still tentative. We've got, final QA QC to run on them. But as of the allocation committee meeting, and I think we will finalize these numbers in January, but what we are looking at is an EBID end of year balance of 32,735 acre feet. That's right in the ballpark that I had been indicating. EP1's end of year balance is 59,265. That's a little lower than what I had been anticipating, and I think that the numbers EP1 had given me may not have included things like the county tail well field adjustment and so on. But those will be our starting balances, about 33,000 for us and 59,000 for EP1. The final diversion ratio was 0.845. And the final allocation that we did, which was in May, I had used 0.841. So that was a pretty sort of a 3-point shot from the logo that hit nothing but net, shall we say.
You're not saying we should expect better in the future? You're not gonna close that up? Thank you, Dr. King. That's just me jesting. I appreciate it.
If I had to be honest, there was a little bit of luck involved. That's below any standard error for any statistical methods that I have. So bang on there. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have had a little bit of snow since our last meeting, not much. We did have a sort of a flatline period, but there has also been some snow melt, which on the downside means less spring runoff, but on the upside means that we have been picking up about 1,200 to 1,500 acre feet in Elephant Butte Reservoir for the past for the past couple of weeks, which I did not expect this time of year. And this is before, you recall that Jerry Melendez from Reclamation at our last meeting told us that they were not moving the unused P&P water down until next month because of a sediment plug in the Rio Chama. So 12 to 1,500 acre feet per day before they move that water down is more than I was expecting. But that will mean that much less spring runoff. And, it's not magically making water, but at least we are getting water into the reservoir. Those are the key points I wanted to touch on. Were there any other questions about what's going on?
I'm interested in the sediment plug. Do you know the status of that? Last time we talked, they were bound up in red tape.
I have not heard about it since our last board meeting.
Thank you. And the next one's a technical one. You mentioned that snow is running off now instead of in the spring. My first reaction is good because it's in the reservoir and able to be allocated and released.
Right.
What's the downside of having it here earlier in the water year as opposed to later, leaving it in the mountains as snow? Is there any downside?
Not really. It'll help New Mexico reduce their compact debit for this year. Although it'll make it, it catches up next year. It's a little longer time to evaporate in the reservoir, but I don't know. It's sublimation is a hard thing to quantify, but I would imagine that reservoir evaporation would be higher than snow sublimation. But again, it's fairly minor.
Yeah, I'm running through that head, suggesting in the idea of maybe not because it's spread out more when it's in the mountains as snow than it isn't concentrated in the reservoir. But I don't know. The last question in regards to getting the P&P water down, do they have until December 31st to get it for both compact accounting and, well, I guess that's the only part that really matters. And what happens if they don't?
I don't know all of the details of P&P water that's, kind of tied up in that Middle Rio Grande administration. I think if it, well, let's see what would. I don't think anything awful happens, if that's what you're wondering. It's just if they don't get it down at the end of this year, they'll get it down at the beginning of next year.
Okay.
But that would be that's not really my P&P water is not my bailiwick.
Thank you, Dr. King. Any other questions? Appreciate the board's indulgence. Anything final, Dr. King, before I move on?
I don't think so. If you would like a written update, I can certainly put one in. It's just a little early in the month for me to get the assembly of that scheduled. Would you like a written summary with the storage levels and things like that?
I see no request for one, Dr. King.
No request? Okay.
No request. So we'll get the next written report will be the 8th of January.
Okay.
Mr. Narvaez.
Good
you have anything
morning.
more?
Good morning. Nothing to report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narvaez. That brings us to general administrative. There was a request to move item F before item D in our agenda. I failed to mention that earlier in the board meeting. Is there any objection from the board in moving item 10F ahead of item 10D? Hearing no objection, that's how we'll proceed.
Also, one correction, the maintenance project PowerPoint should be, was attached in your packet, should actually be under item E. But I don't know if that's necessarily a big deal, but just.
Thank you. I don't think that it is, but thank you. So that brings us to the financial report. Ms. Byron. Thank you. Before you proceed, Ms. Byron, you're actually sharing the file directory. If you'd share that document.
Okay.
Thank you.
Better. Okay, cash balances for, as of November 26th, didn't change significantly between November 26th and November 30th. We have about 6.1 between the cash in the bank and investments. The book balance was less, so we had some outstanding checks. And we haven't had a lot of activity in our investment account for the 1 month for the year, since we are now in fiscal year 2025. We did have some uncommon transactions. We made our quarterly payment to the DOR for $91,000. We paid for the repair and maintenance on the roof of $103,000. We bought some more things for the California lateral grant. We bought a John Deere loader, and we got a drop-in engine for a motor grader. And I stand for questions.
Red Brick Building, is that the official name for this building?
It's what I hear it referred to as all the time.
No comment.
Thank you. Any questions on the cash balances? Hearing none, do you have anything else to report, Ms. Byron?
No, the next item would be the contracts.
Very good. So the first one is professional service contract to DataNet Engineering.
So DataNet Engineering is a consultant that finance uses on our current/old finance software. And we're renewing or requesting renewal of the contract to help us finish going to the new software. This is year 4, no rates have changed.
Thank you. I have 2 questions on it. I believe this is the last renewal available on this contract. Is that correct? Given that we're transitioning from Microsoft Dynamics, are we going to need another contract for dynamic support?
No, he only does Dynamics. I think we should be
I guess what I'm
not
asking
needing
is,
help in the future.
okay, so we are not going to need an RFP for these services moving forward?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Other questions regarding the contract to DataNet Services? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to approve the renewal of the contract for professional services to Data Net Engineering Inc.
Motion so made.
I have a motion by Mr. Claypool, seconded by Mr. Garai to approve the contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being the president, the ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item C, which is the approval of award and contract for professional lobbyist services to, is it DeVore? DeVore and Aragon, or DeVore/Aragon. Ms. Byron.
This was an RFP that went out on October 24th, was due on November 7th. There were 2 respondents. This one was evaluated by 3 people, and they chose this one. The cost is $40,000 per year, paid monthly. The evaluation committee was Josh, Rafa, and yourself, I believe. And this would be the first of 4 years for the lobbyist.
Thank you very much. And my understanding is that the contract is currently being formatted into our standard professional services contract.
Correct.
And so my recommendation to the board is that we approve the award and we delegate the authority to negotiate and sign the contract to the manager. What is the will of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract and designate authority to the Josh Smith manager.
I have a motion for Mr. Sloan to award the RFP to DeVore and Aragon and delegate the authority to negotiate and sign the contract to Mr. Smith. Seconded by Mr. Gray. Any further discussion? Did I state that motion correctly, Mr. Sloan?
I think we're close.
Thank you. Hearing no discussion, discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Being the president, the ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. That brings us to our end of year fiscal 2024 financial review. Mr. Franzel, good morning.
Morning. So I'm gonna just give kind of a high level recap of fiscal year 24. I'm sure you guys are curious. It will be finalized in the audit coming forward. So you guys should be able to see that. So here's kind of the model. I'll zoom in. See this right here, it says that we're about 1.1 million over budget. That's actually a slight misstatement due to encumbrances, meaning we made purchases with that money, or we tied up that money for purchases in that year, but since those purchases haven't been delivered, it doesn't reflect on our budget. Those will be coming in here, and we'll be using some of this portion of cash as rollover cash for the fiscal year 25 budget to make those orders. Really what that number shakes out to be is about $650,000 left over. So that's a pretty good, healthy savings, which we'll use to do or complete some of our budget for fiscal year 25.
I'm going to ask you to back up and restate that because I was having trouble following it. So this indicates that we are $1.1 million over budget. Is that what you, is that your initial statement? This shows that we're 1.1 million under.
Correct.
Thank you.
But we haven't spent the cash yet from a accounting standpoint. Thus, we're only really 650K over budget. Under, sorry.
Thank you. And so of the $1.1 million under budget that this is indicating, approximately $500,000 have been already encumbered, but the cash has not been dispersed.
Correct.
I understand. Thank you.
Yep. So our new financial process should be kicking off in January. This model will be retooled based on that. We should be having more detailed reporting with that, more actual live numbers, so there won't be too much of a heavy lift. Also, what I propose doing is doing a smoothing. The way that this budget was developed was, okay, well, we're gonna purchase you know, a big piece of equipment costs $350,000, I'm gonna spread that equally month over month. When the cash hits, it's for the full 350,000, so that's why you see those big blue bars, you know, overarching these orange bars for the budget to actual comparison. And so what I wanna do with that is kind of build in a smoothing and make, you know, regular budget adjustments so that we can kind of really see what that number is looking like. It makes it easier to read graphically. I think that'd just be something easy I can do and fix for us. It will just require some budget adjustments throughout the year. I recommend doing those at least quarterly. And then I can give a quarterly report via this model to the board.
All right, so if I understand correctly, you were recommending that we do quarterly budget amendments.
Correct.
Okay. Given that, what's the feedback from the board on Mr. Franzoi's recommendation there?
But your line, we're above this line, we're gonna spread it out over the year.
It's actually, everything is spread out unless I can tell you definitively when that expense will actually hit our books. So if I'm gonna order equipment, it's technically encumbered, right? But I can't tell you definitively when we're gonna receive shipment of that item, thus the transfer of cash. So what I do is I spread it evenly to build the budget. What I'm saying is, okay, we received this for 350K. Now I'm gonna adjust the budget to show that 350K in June, and thus our expenses should be there for cash, just to make those bars evened out. So it's just gonna be kind of smoothing it out, showing you guys the timeliness of those expenses, just give you a better, clearer snapshot.
So what's your threshold, dollar threshold gonna be for expense to do that with?
It will be every expense, so $0.
So, Mr. President, basically what, we have an established budget. All he's saying is we're going to adjust that budget 4 times a year to reflect what's actually occurring. A lot of organizations do it at the end of the year, and they adjust the budget and they move accounts, and, but that way, what you're looking at is closer to actual.
Correct. It's just gonna give you a better picture of where, it's kind of a rolling adjusted budget, so I'm not comparing apples to oranges, maybe things change in the budget. I think it's very important that we do this specifically this upcoming year because of all this grant funding coming through. You know, it's gonna be tens of millions of dollars being adjusted to the budget periodically, and I wanna be able to give you guys a clear snapshot of, you know, that funding coming in as well as EBID's financial status.
I don't think either way bothers me.
Okay, I don't really think you guys would notice, I just wanna let you guys know that I'll be potentially doing this smoothing thing if you guys.
Presumably, we have to approve those amendments, is that correct? Yeah, and that's why I wanted to open it up to feedback to you on it. The 650,000 that we're under for the year,
Yes,
primarily, what is that made up of? What's the largest piece of that?
capital expenditures,
Capital expenditures. Okay.
because of our savings at the fleet management, and I held back some of those capital expenditures as well as timeliness of delivery. And the reason I held back some of those capital expenditures towards the end of the year was to make sure we operated a 5% margin of error for the budget. And we're at about 6%. So right in line with my 5% target.
Thank you. And so I'm looking at,
And you can see that down.
looking at the top line of the budget so we're under budget by about 300,000 on labor, is that correct?
Yes, and that's due to timeliness of getting our staff fully staffed due to turnover at the beginning of the year.
And that kind of
Primarily.
brings me to the point I'll make, and then the capital outlay, we're under by about 600,000, and I was thinking that was the 1.1 million, that's the chunk you're saying just hasn't matched cash disbursement?
Yes and no. As you saw in Karen's cash statement, we did purchase that loader. That's about 186,000. So you can add that to that capital outlay. There was just more of the timeliness of those expenses hitting. They didn't hit until our fiscal year 25. So I would say it's between labor and capital outlay.
I'm accustomed to us being under budget on labor because it's hard to fill all of our positions. And so we budget for what we're trying to fill, and then we deal with what actually gets filled. In these quarterly budget adjustments, would it be the intent of the district to reallocate payroll expenses that didn't occur? Because we can't, it's hard to go back in time and make up the lost labor. I simply say, well, we'll spend that 2 months from now, and that's how we'll make up for it.
I think that would be best fit for either Q3 or semi-annually. And the reason for that is most of the overtime expense occurs during the irrigation season. And that's another big contributor to why labor and fringes is under actual or budget, is because forecasting overtime can be difficult.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't want to get overly bogged down in my questions, trying to understand what we'll be accomplishing through the quarterly amendment process. I'd like to hand it over to the board if there's any more questions on that. Mr. Clayshall.
Mr. President, what capital expenses are we pushing into next year?
So I have those in the fiscal year 25 budget. I could present that to you guys at a later board meeting if you'd like.
I'm curious. to know.
I believe one of them was a gooseneck trailer, and then some engineering items, such as a plotter scanner, some surveying equipment, and maybe one additional item in maintenance that I can't think about, a piece of equipment.
Mr. Sloan, you're the chair of the budget committee. I would expect that the budget committee would be now engaged quarterly for this process.
Correct.
Do you foresee any concerns with that?
No, I think that everybody's been really busy this last month or so, 2 months, so we haven't really done much in the budget committee, but yeah, we fully intend to start up here in January to have a lot of budget meetings and try to get things, see what we can figure out.
Okay,
But I know everybody's been really busy right now. I was just thinking about for him, actually, on some of the committees, does he just fill the role for Casey?
for Mr. Chris? So my expectation is that if there's going to be a change in leadership for the board in January, and at that time, it may make sense to reorganize the membership for committees. I would suggest it is right to do that after that time. Specifically with the recommendation from this board that the president of this board should not chair any committee. And so, Mr. Roby Rosa's, the next president's, committee assignments may change because of that.
Correct.
So with that, any other questions regarding the budget review?
If you have any questions, I can get into more detail. Just come by, talk to me, shoot me a text, email, call me, whatever questions you have, I'm happy to answer them. Just lastly, to close this out, big thank you to Karen for working on this and putting a lot of these numbers, helping me out, getting through this year, as well as Leah, big help in the finance department. Next, I'll be moving on to the next agenda if there's something else.
Please proceed, Ms. Sprinkler.
So I put together recently, and this is kind of mock data, it's not quite finalized yet, but this is a maintenance project model. We will be posting this to the website for constituents to see what maintenance projects we're working on. And it'll help us have better organization between our north, central, and south yards. And so what we could do here is if you were the central manager, for instance, you could click on this central and it'll automatically update your project list for you. And then we can see what are grant projects, what are EBID funded projects, and then what is the breakout or makeup of those projects? Are they, what season do they fall in? Is it post irrigation, pre-irrigation, major construction? And so we have a request date here. We'll have our start date, our estimated start date, and then our estimated completion date for those projects. And it's just really to keep the maintenance department, give them a tool for better management, as well as providing kind of transparency to constituents for the projects we're working on.
Can you zoom in a little bit more? I'm just curious on how, how that organization's happening. Thank you.
And so this is,
Mr. Sloan.
Are these are things you guys have identified internally, or these are things farmers have requested?
both.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get into how that's gonna start rolling out right after this, but I just wanted you guys to see this is by no means final. I will be putting an estimated dollar value. What this will allow us to do is kind of forecast all of our maintenance expenses, which I'll be getting into later, how we're gonna do that. But this is just kind of a snapshot. I can present this at board meetings, but we can use it as an internal tool if you guys are curious. What is our maintenance team working on? What kind of projects do they have? What are they doing down south? What are they doing central, north? But there might not be need to present it, as it'll be posted online and updated either semi-monthly or monthly.
It's just one, this is the comment, I think if you put it on the website, I think it's good, but I think as you guys finish things, I would either highlight them yellow, I would not delete them, I would leave them so people see that you're actually achieving something.
And so I do have that in this master tab where it has the actual completion date, and it will be posted on there. And I can just, what you're saying, mark it as kind of yellow or give
Yeah,
it
maybe
some
every
sort
year
of
you
formatting.
clean the slate every year or whatever it is, but.
Yeah, that is a good point. I will make sure that's done.
And so, I don't know about needing to present it to the board. That said, my thought is having a hard copy version of this in our monthly board packet, so the board members can review it. I'm seeing some head shaking on that. Format that fits for that, that'd be great.
Also in this master tab, if you scroll to the right, it automatically builds all the Gantt charts. And so they can kind of see, hey, this is the timing, this is where they'll be busy working on those projects in those various areas. I will update this for those irrigation, like pre-irrigation season, post-irrigation season, construction season, color code them. But for now, this is just kind of where the model's at.
It looks like by week,
Gantt
correct?
chart. I'm sorry,
By week is what that chart is? Did I
Yes.
understand that correctly? Thank you.
by week. And so that's a weekly outlook for that. And then we can move on to the next item, which will be, I forget to mention, big thank you to James and the maintenance department for helping me put this together. I think it's gonna be a helpful tool for the district and for constituents to kind of, smash those questions for what is our maintenance team doing? I think it'll eliminate a lot of that confusion that's been happening. So big thanks to James and the maintenance department. Next, Juan's gonna come up here and showcase an app we've been working on. That's that maintenance request app. This app is going to feed into this model to allow us to update it for constituent requests. Juan.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Juan. I think if you just hover over that green thing, make sure that it's showing that. I think it's a little lower. Oh, that guy there.
Nope.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, so this is really for us to collect data for maintenance requests and try to ease that process for farmers, anyone, any constituent really. So this is the main reason for this. There we go. The application used for this is ArcGIS Survey 123. What we're looking to do is create a link for the website to have ease of access for our constituents to click on. It'll allow them to submit photos, a location map, all that. It'll also help us create another way to keep records with submitted maintenance requests. The maintenance department will have access through the records through the website, as well as the app to look at in the field, and they'll get pings live as submissions come through. The survey will be open to the public, but we will require EBID members to input their account number to report it as a general report, just to avoid people who aren't main constituents to flood the requests. this is kind of what it'll look like. It'll be a basic survey, simple requests of a range of questions, account number to validate the submission. We'll verify it on our end just to see if that is a constituent. They will have the option to attach photos and a description of the issue when they submit. Along with the survey, there will be a map where they could pinpoint exactly where they are. And that it'll point a map there, and that way, when we review it, we can see exactly where the issue occurs. Just a little bit of what it will look like. You'll just fill out the information. If you do it on your phone, you could easily just attach the photos from your camera roll. As for the map, you can either directly ping to yourself where the issue is, or you can zoom into it on the map and ping it yourself, and we'll have that point on our end. And what it'll look like on our end, for reviewing the submissions, I can set it up to specific members of maintenance to receive these emails to know when a report has been submitted, and they'll be able to see the records. The submissions will be shown in a spreadsheet, and when we select a single record, you can see the photos as well as the map location map. So this is kind of what it'll look like on their end. So they'll have a map here. You'll see there'll be a ping of the location. You can zoom in, all that. You'll see there's a record here that's highlighted. You'll see the quick information on the right, just a quick overview of the report itself. And this is how we'll generate the report. There's an automatic form that we can generate for a report to print out for ourselves on our end, so we can have a physical copy of the report itself. And this is.
And so is that the back end part piece of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
This will be the back end. And this is one Alex did yesterday for the Porter lateral. Highlighted here, you'll see the Porter laterals marked there, the attached photo and the location map there on Porter. There's South Valley, there's Porter, and here's the photo of the issue there.
And so, just to kind of recap and be clear, what this allows is for constituents to utilize their phone, tablet, whatever. Okay, my turnout's leaking, I have a problem. I really want EBID's maintenance department to come and fix it. They log into the app, they take a picture, they tag their location. Maintenance team gets the request. We can dispatch our maintenance department out there to assess and do any repairs or maintenance necessary.
Mr. Roverosa, do you have a system to prioritize the projects?
We do not yet, but we can definitely work on that. We would just have to figure out what metrics we want to. Right now, the prioritization is by request date. And then our engineering team / maintenance team will go in and review the pictures of that. We'll do a site visit. We'll assess the damage, the need, the urgency for that individual request. And then I think that's where we'll start building our priority list.
Mr. Gripe?
What about those who don't have smartphones or?
They can still call in and request in, but it allows us to also do it more efficiently here at EBID, because now we can put the information in and submit it easier than we could have before.
But otherwise, they can still call the maintenance department.
They can still call in, although we would encourage them to utilize the app because it will be faster and we'll be able to respond faster with that.
Mr. Sloan?
I was gonna say I think you guys have some spring mailers you mail for different things. I would just make sure you put something in there, that way they can.
We will be doing that, and we're currently working on, this just rolled out, we did our test, works great. We're gonna be putting together a package to show how to download the app, how to submit your request, kind of a step-by-step instructions. We could mail that out, but we will definitely be posting that on EBID's.
Well, I was just thinking, if you like don't you like, they do like some different billing stuff, I think you guys mail something in the spring, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I would just have some little part of it in there, that way they can go to the website, not like it's extra expensive, separate mailing, just
a
added
little,
to it.
a little blurb
Something.
explaining it.
Yeah.
I think it'll be really good. I think you guys might get overwhelmed.
Yeah, in general, I think this is fantastic.
Mr. Rubio?
Josh and I were out in the field and we saw this pipe with very low cover. Went to the link. We went to the link and, very easy to use. Took us no more than 2 minutes. Very simple, very straightforward. You take a picture while you're there. I think it'll be a quick learn on the end user side.
Mr. Esslinger.
You know, what's beneficial about this program here is it updates our structure book. The structure book goes back to 1914. Describes every turnout, every check structure, everything that's involved in our infrastructure. Before, it was had to be put in by hand when you put in a new turnout, per se, on a canal that was requested by a constituent. You had to enter it by hand into the structure book. In this format, it will automatically go into that structure book so that we can continue our history of that foundation of where everything is and where the station number is located. So it's a great tool for the future of keeping that structure book up to current standards.
Thank you, Mr. Esslinger. Mr. Rosa.
When is this going live?
Going live as soon as we finish the instructions. So it's technically live right now, but until we have instructions clear for everybody to use, we're not gonna do it. But it also,
You mean not gonna advertise it? You say it's technically live right now, meaning can I go get the link and click it?
yes,
Okay. You're just not advertising it?
we're not advertising it right now. We will be doing this as soon as we can.
Thank you for allowing me to interrupt you. Mr. I'm sorry.
My fault.
Ms. Rubio.
I'm sorry, I was just, mentioning to Juan to go back to the. In case anybody wanted to try it or.
So when they click on the link, this is the actual report. So it's super simple, just fill it out. For the indication type of work, we have just a drop-down box to make it a little bit simpler, structure modification, turnout repair, water measurement. Then you just fill out a brief description. Here, you just click it and it'll open up your camera roll, add your photo if you've taken one. And from here, you can either use a little precise location here and it'll tag us over here at South Melendres, so it'll point us here, and then it'll make the point there and we could submit here and quick, and then we'll get an email notification on our end that someone submitted.
And with that model I just showed you guys, that maintenance request model, the inputs for this have been set up tabular to where we can just copy and paste. We can export that data table and paste it into that maintenance model and it'll flow very efficiently.
Mr. Slum.
Have you guys thought about using this app for like your permits? Like I mean, for me, I just did like some harvest gates. This would be great if I could use this app to like.
I do have something in the background. I'll bring that up again. I do have something pretty much prepared for that as well. So I'll bring that up more.
Because I know a lot of people I talk to, they would like to do some things, but they're too lazy to go out to the office to go do.
No, I understand.
So you could,
They're too tied up. They're too tied up.
Well, that's the big push going this direction, is to free up constituent time. It also makes us very much efficiently so things get done faster.
No, I think it's good because, if you're some guy, if you're in Hatchie, you gotta drive to Cruces to go put a gate in on a canal that you don't want to do. 5 years later, you haven't put the gate in.
And that's where you can take a picture, say, I need a gate design here. You'll put in new construction hypothetically.
Correct.
And then our engineering team will go out there, talk to you, get all the gate dimensions, everything done, we'll fab it in-house. So I think it's great and we're on that track to get that done.
What I'm hearing is a lot of excitement about this. So,
Good.
and, following up on Mr. Garai's point about can you still call in? So I will tell you, I've called stuff in where I just haven't done a good job identifying what's broken. And EBID is out working on something else because I didn't get them steered right. And this allows me to geolocate it, send a photo, et cetera. Sometimes I pay more attention to EBID infrastructure as a board member than I did as a farmer. And so I may just be driving or riding by something and I see a problem. And instead of contacting the manager and texting photos, now I've got some place to go and say, hey, I see a gopher hole here. leaking under a road. Identifies it. So I like the ability that I will probably communicate better with the app than I will over the phone.
So in addition to kind of the project model we showed you, as well as kind of the app we showed you, we currently are going to start phasing out all of our ditch riders and maintenance team to be using similar software to report and update what Gary was saying, our structure book. And what the structure book does is it contains every crossing, every turnout, every, pipeline in the future, as well as any siphon EBID has. And what we're doing is we're having them go out there, take a picture, tag their location on this map. So it'll update all of our structures and then give us our condition quality, good, fair, poor, so on and so forth, excellent condition. We're gonna be using, so it puts it kind of in this tabular format. And so once this is updated, and we tested it out in 2B.
Yes, 2B.
In unit 2B, we had a ditch rider go take all the pictures, start updating our structure book. So it has when it was last looked at by somebody, and then when it was last looked at by our engineering department. And then once this is all updated and done, I'm gonna go ahead and take it over from engineering. I'm gonna put it all in tabular format. Based on conditions, I will estimate a useful life with the engineering department for those structures and a cost for those structures. And then we can build a maintenance forecast for redoing all of our structures going forward and kind of the quality for our entire district.
Wow.
So we have been working on this stuff. So big thank you to Juan and engineering. They've been monumental in kind of helping me kind of do this vision. I mean, it was there, it just wasn't up to date. It wasn't at the level it's at now. So any questions?
Good job.
I'm suddenly thinking like, man, I thought I was doing pretty good at watching out for my infrastructure. I want this on my own operation.
And so just wanted to kind of update you guys on what we're doing, some cool, exciting news to look forward to on how we're gonna better manage the district.
Thank you. Anything else other than wow from the board members? Thank you. Caballero, thank you. Mr. Franzoy, Mr. Rubio, thank you all. Brings us to the manager's update. Mr. Smith.
First item under the manager's update is the upcoming irrigation leadership workshop in Arizona, January 21st to the 23rd. We will not have a board meeting between now and then. We need to approve travel to that conference. I know myself, Naomi, and Joa at the very least will be going as far as staff, and I'm not sure how many board members would like to go.
Thank you. So Irrigation Leadership Conference, looking at the agenda, you should plan to travel Tuesday, January 21st. With the return on the 24th. Yep. For the return on the 24th. All right. Mr. Rovirosa, help remind me who all went last year. Yourself, myself.
Randy.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm going to suggest to the board is that we send the largest contingent that's not a quorum to this conference. There are things we could do if there was a quorum, but the truth is that this is the kind of conference where when you get together at meals, you're going to be talking about the conference. And they necessarily are things about policy. So I would advise against sending a quorum and trying to protect conversations and just send less than a quorum. That said, I recommend 4 board members go. I've been to this numerous times. I've lost count how many times I've been to this. It is outstanding. If you go to one conference a year, this is the one. This is the one for you as board members. Mr. Smith, this is the one for you and your senior staff for being the leadership of an irrigation district. I'm willing, and actually, this is the conference that I'm excited to go to. I'm also very happy not to go because there's another board member that's never been to this that wants to go. We've already got 4 members going.
Mr. President,
Mr. Smith,
I would look to Mr. Lutz, but if there's interest by more than a quorum, we can simply post a notice of potential quorum for the conference. It's not, in my opinion, that big deal.
That's correct, and I believe we did that earlier in the year when they had the meeting in El Paso. We've done it when there have been biodam tours that may implicate having numerous board members. Recently did it for a lunch.
so how do we handle discussion outside of an open meeting? Because necessarily, people will be discussing like, wow, can you believe what we just said in that presentation? How does that apply to our district? And I'm gonna have a quorum of board members doing that.
Yeah, well, you essentially indicate that there's going to be no action taken on any items. I think most recently, when it was the lunch, there was a posting that I thought had good language. I think Josh, you worked with Naomi putting that together. That was legally compliant.
All right, given that, I think it'd be awesome if all 9 of us went. It is an outstanding conference. It really is. Just about everything that Mr. Pauly touches is exceptional. And this is no exception. So it's a tough time of year. It is worth doing the hard things to get to this conference. Who is interested in attending?
I can go, I'm done by that time.
They should go, yeah, for sure.
James? I hear you.
My problem is I'm scheduled to be out of town for
For another reason?
earlier in the month, and that would be like just getting back and then taking off to Arizona, making a big gap of being away from business, but I am interested in going.
Well, let's pencil you in. So it does not require airfare to get there. We generally drive.
I know me and Rafa flew last year.
So short-term cancellation is easier if we're driving than if we're
Run
going.
up 15 passenger van.
And the EBID part of that, Mr. Fulton's also. Thank you,
Yeah, that's a good point.
thank you. John, I see you being concerned about being busy.
No, those dates are out.
Okay,
I'd love to go, love to. Very fun.
5-7. Mr. Smith, how many staff are you interested in sending?
We haven't really discussed beyond the 2 that have been asked to speak and myself, so that's 3. I'd ask for approval of 5.
All right, so this is not a particularly good conference for legal counsel. There are other conferences that are better. If we're gonna take the expense of sending our counsel to conferences, this probably is not the one. That would be my opinion. Mr. Roveros, Mr. Sloan, Mr. Garai, do you have a different opinion?
No, I think that's correct. This is really a relatively inexpensive conference to go to. So, yeah, I think it's good to take as many board members as you can, and, you know, that there's staff that Josh feels needs to go. But yeah, I think legal's not appropriate.
Very good. So, what is the will of the board on, approving travel?
Travel for up to 7 board members and up to 5 staff.
I have a motion for Mr. Roveros to approve travel for up to 7 board members and up to 5 EBID staff for the irrigation leadership workshop.
All expenses incurred.
To cover all actual expenses.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Glacial. Any further discussion? Mr. Smith, do you believe that is adequate?
Yes, sir.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being the president, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. And I'm excited to hear your topic, Naomi. I will just mention that. What are you talking about? Making sure the manager is successful, the invaluable executive secretary.
That's a difficult one.
It's a really hard job.
We have,
And that's why I stay quiet.
so, we have the subject matter expert, and
Thank you, Mr. President.
I appreciate you going and sharing that knowledge with other irrigation districts. Thank you. Okay.
All right. I believe that covers the irrigation leaders workshop. Next item on the agenda is the LRG task force meeting update. We attended in force the last LRG. It's now the Alliance. So if you hear about the Lower Rio Grande Alliance, that was the Lower Rio Grande Task Force. This is a group currently headed by the Interstate Stream Commission Director, includes the Bureau of Reclamation, a lot of interested parties, the amici, our City of Las Cruces partners, and as far as an update, the whole process is currently still in the, I call it drafting portion of figuring out what exactly this alliance is going to do. Initially, it was presented as defining, shovel-ready, no-brainer projects to put money on the ground and start conservation projects. I think that is the purpose. There are some issues as far as the Bureau of Reclamation participation. If we become a voting or public advisory council, it creates other legal ramifications for them. So the structure of the alliance is still kind of in flux. And they've sent out a survey, which we're working on responses to. Those are due on Friday. And allegedly there was going to be another meeting on this Friday. Apparently that's not going to occur. I'm not sure when the next meeting is actually scheduled for.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I will add to that. It's tough to say exactly what the goal of this will be. It's clearly led by the ISC. I agree with Mr. Smith that it's in its formation stage. My expectation is it will become the group that is responsible for generating broad public buy-in for projects that meet state and federal needs. So how do we market these projects to a diverse constituent base? So buy-in early in that process, I have found to be the most effective way to actually accomplish that. And so the ISC is trying to sort out how do we form a group that gets that early buy-in. Mr. Rosa, do you have anything else to add regarding the alliance?
I think that the IC is putting a lot of energy into it, and that there are a lot of well-intentioned and interested parties that are also putting a lot of legwork in to come up with clever and innovative projects that will certainly benefit our entire community. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with them and to getting these projects rolled out in a quick, very efficient manner.
Put on the accelerator. And I agree with Mr. Rosa that there's going to be projects that as you make the group small, you're going to have blind spots. And the idea that, innovative projects will come out of having a broader spectrum group of people that are, looking for ways to improve the hydrological reality of our community. Thank you. Did anyone else attend that?
I did.
Mr. Sloan?
They looked for somebody to be the chairperson for the committee, and I volunteered you, because you weren't there. That didn't happen, but anyway.
Yeah, Mr. Carrasco. So, on an outcome, the one outcome that I think we had is that a steering committee is going to be formed. It was suggested that it be made up of 2 individuals that aren't necessarily stakeholder representatives, and maybe it was 3, 2 or 3 and the chairman of the alliance, who would presumably be a stakeholder representative. And it is just to do the work in between meetings. The steering committee is not prioritizing anything for the alliance. They're just like, okay, the alliance wants to do this. Our next meeting is in 6 weeks. How do we organize all the things necessary to get it back to the alliance in 6 weeks? It's expected to be the workhorse of the alliance. There was some confusion about that. It was thought that it would be the, I don't even know what to call it, you know, the select group of people that would actually direct the priorities and the goals of the alliance, and that's, I think the sole outcome of this was, that's not what we're looking for as a steering committee. Mr. Carrasco, who is a commissioner? Yeah, commissioner for the Interstate Stream Commission. It was suggested that he chair the alliance. And his response was, you know, I was sitting here quiet, what did I do to y'all? But I think he'd be an excellent selection if he's willing to do it. And the chairperson's role in that would just be to ensure that the steering committee actually heard the guidance of the alliance. They're moving in the right direction. I also am hopeful that it will, you know, produce fruit. Mr. Smith, anything else?
That's all I have.
That brings us to engineering and maintenance. Mr. Rubio. I will mention Mr. Barrett is not here because he's out working. We normally don't see him this time of year because he's just incredibly busy making sure all of the projects are happening. Mr. Rubio.
Good morning, thank you. We have Scott out working as well. He's out in the field this morning, so we have one license that I'm going to present.
And so, as I mentioned to the board, the licenses are something that if we go to a consent agenda, you will not receive a presentation on unless you request it.
Or unless staff deems it's necessary that you see something.
Thank you.
So we have one license number 2024-L-130. It's for Catherine Whittington, and this is to operate and maintain an existing vehicle culvert crossing at the lower Chamberino lateral, approximate station 164 plus 42. We recommend approval.
Questions from the board? I move to approve the permit. I have a motion from Mr. Roverosa to approve permit 2024-L-130.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Clayshore. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion is closed. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously.
Well, I did it.
That's all I got for you guys today.
Thank you, Mr. Rubio. Was there any maintenance project updates?
No updates, business as usual, grant projects are underway, we're getting out of the way for harvest, business as usual.
Thank you, Mr. Rubio.
Yes, sir.
HR and safety. We have an update in our packet.
You have an update in your packet. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. I would like to acknowledge and congratulate Dr. Fox. We'll be retiring at the end of the year after 13 plus years here and seeking other adventures in the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you.
Dr. Fox, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's certainly been a pleasure. This has been a decision that's been in the works for a few years now. Big motivation, several different factors, but a big motivation is to be closer to my daughter. She's in Washington State. My youngest son, he's in Montana, and I'm pretty sure they both will stay in that part of the world. So this puts me in relative proximity to them, but not in their lap, you know, and so for however long, you know, this works out. I'm assuming a position with the Oregon Water Resources Department to be the water master of the Upper Klamath River Basin, which is a big job. A lot of big issues up there, major controversies, not terribly dissimilar to what we're experiencing down here, but several orders of magnitude greater just in terms of the volumes of water you have to work with up there. Other complexities certainly include the Klamath tribes. They've got major tribal issues there and claims with respect to in-stream flows and how that plays with the Endangered Species Act. Recent dam removals up there, strictly hydroelectric, but that it sort of creates a perception. You know, it's a place of change, sort of ground zero, if you will, that a lot of Western states are keeping a close eye on. We are being viewed closely as well. For several years, I've spent some time tracking, you know, various issues west-wide. In my communications and travels related, New Mexico's Lower Rio Grande always comes up. You know, it's one to keep an eye on, try to learn from. But much the same can be said for the Upper Klamath, the Columbia, Eastern Snake Plain in Idaho. A lot of big stuff going on west-wide. So it's going to be an adventure for sure. But I look forward to finishing out what I consider to be essentially the last third, if you will, of my productive career, trying to tackle some of the issues up there and see where I go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. I've greatly appreciated your expertise and your guidance as I've tried to learn and navigate the water policy world.
Dr. Fox, I think you'll be available for us as a resource.
Yeah, I mean, I've made it clear to Mr. Smith that I have every expectation and hope to, you know, maintain a professional acumen, and then certainly, you know, to help where and when I can. You know, you spend 25 years, you know, in an area, you know, you kind of get sort of attached to it, you know, and so this is a decision that is not without a degree of hardship, if you will. To be quite frank, in some respect, it's kind of scary. Yeah, I'll be closer to, you know, some of my immediate family, but at the same time, much further away, you know, where my folks are concerned and related. And, you know, growing up where I did on that little ranch and stuff, you know, up there in that PJ country and such, you know, I just over the years, you know, have sort of detested, if you will, this, thorny, prickly, rough Chihuahuan desert country and whatnot. But I tell you, you know, over time, it kind of grows on you, you know, and so this valley and the issues and just the farmers and a number of you here in this room, John in particular, I mean, that I've developed personal relationships with, friends, you know, and so it's a tough call in some ways, but on the other hand, I feel like as I, you know, in my spiritual, if you will, relations with Gary and looking for the signs and such, feel like, no, this is the right direction for me. That I think I can do some good things up there. Plus, beautiful country. So me and my horse are going up there. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
With that, anything else on the HR and safety update? That completes our open session agenda. Are there any other items of business? Hearing none, I will accept the motion to go into closed session. I have a motion from Mr. Garai, seconded by Mr. Ludwig, to go into closed session to discuss the agenda items. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Continue the chair. The ayes have it. Motion passed unanimously, and we are in closed session. I will accept a motion to come out of closed session. I have a motion from Mr. Garai, seconded by Mr. Colquitt, to come out of closed session. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opinion of the president, the ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. We are in open session. I will note for the record that no items were discussed in closed session other than those noted in the motion to go into closed session, which were the agenda items. Is there any further business? Hearing none, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I have a motion for Mr. Colquitt, seconded by Mr. Clay to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.
Okay.